Hello and welcome to another episode of Radio Free Urbanism. I am your host, Alex Williams, and I'm joined today by two delightful folks. That is Ethan Myers. Say hi.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the 50th episode of the show.
I love the episode.
This episode of the show.
And also, of course, Nick Laporte joins us from Vancouver.
Hello, and welcome back, everybody. Yeah, it is the 50th episode, and I can't believe we've made it this far already. It's crazy.
It is actually kind of crazy how fast time flies, right? We've been doing this for just about a year, and I remember like it was yesterday, Nick messaging me and saying, "I'm assembling a team. Let's go."
I remember checking my Gmail and seeing Nick Laporte. Hi, I am a YouTube creator. Actually,
yeah, and I remember I talked to Nick about it, and we had kind of a list of creators, and Ethan was actually the number one on that list. That we're like, hey, well, you need a third seat. It can't just be two people. Ethan was number one, and thank goodness he said yes, because then we would have had to continue searching, and we're both I don't know, that would have been too much effort. We'd take the first pick, of course, and we're glad we got you. I also want to say thanks to the folks in the live chat here. We've got Austin, Jen, and Skitch joining us, kind of our regulars, joining us live on the show here on a Wednesday afternoon, recording the show. And to get on the live chat, to participate in that, you can go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. And for as little as $1 a month, you can join the live chat, just like these super duper cool folks here have. And we want to say thanks to Lynn M for being our latest Patreon subscriber. Literally the coolest person we know. Isn't that right, Ethan?
That's true. Many people are saying this.
Many people are saying this. Nick, do you want to talk for a second?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about something, and it's that when we started this podcast, we had to come up with a name. Obviously, that's what you do. You can't just use ChatGPT to just make up names. I guess you could, but we didn't do that. So I was looking for the document. I can't seem to find it unless you guys can find it. So I want to see if you guys remember any of the names that we came up with.
You couldn't find the doc?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's a skill issue, because I have the doc open right here. It's titled Brainstorm.
What?
Did I not scroll far down enough to see?
No, you don't have to scroll down very far to see it. It's on the 21st row in the A column, and you guys have found it.
Oh, yeah, no, we had like a vote. We had like a vote one. That's why.
We used ranked choice voting.
Oh yeah, we have ranked choice voting on the other sheet. It's a 2-sheet.
There
sheet.
It is.
Yeah.
See, I don't know these sheets.
Okay, I'll read these off here. Okay, so we had Urban Sync, Pedal Path and Platform. Urban Pulse, Urban Pyramid. I'm not sure where. I don't even remember.
That was, without a doubt, the least popular of all of them.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Feet First into Urbanism. That was my number one pick. That was the one. And Nick was like, I hate that one. Actually,
Nick was like, it's fine.
Yeah, his vote was, it's fine. Walking and Wheeling, Urbanist Talk, Urbanist Insights, The Urbanism Hour, Urbanism Today, Metro Matters, Pathways to Urbanism, Radio Free Urbanism, Urbanity Uncovered, Streetwise, and The Urbanist Wave. So what do we think of these? Did we make the right choice?
Streetwise is fucking good.
That is pretty good.
Let's change it right now.
Damn.
I'm kind of wondering if maybe that one's taken.
It might
Ethan,
be.
do you know what? Mm-hmm. Ethan was like the major dissenting vote.
I was like, it's okay. Honestly, I think that's probably probably not the best vote that I could have cast, but I had my dissents. Honestly, not as much as I think the biggest dissenter was Nick on most of them, but I guess I dissented where it counted.
Yellow in mine.
Yeah. Nick was a little bit more discerning with his votes. This is our kind of ranked choice voting system that we did. The number one was yes, I love it. Then it's good, it's fine, I won't quit if we go with this. And finally, absolutely not. That was a veto. We didn't have any vetoes on
Nobody
any of these.
vetoed anything.
Yeah,
this is because we're all so nice. I think we probably should have vetoed Urban Pyramid.
We're a bit too agreeable.
We are very agreeable people. This is true. I agree with you. Okay, looking back, so you think Urban Pyramid we should have vetoed that, like right off the bat? Somebody should have said absolutely not. Nick, do you have one you would have vetoed?
That one definitely. I mean, that was the only one that I put it in orange. I'm sharing the screen now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. No, I think that was the one that I definitely didn't want. Probably Metro Matters, not because it's bad, but because it's too focused maybe for the topics that we
talk a lot about cycling and pedestrian infrastructure for a podcast to be called Metro Matters. So
yeah, and I think like what's great about our show is that we do have these three different perspectives on how to approach the built environment, right? Ethan is on top of it with transit. Nick is huge on micromobility, and I like just walking places. I think that's huge. That's the number one most important way to build your community, is so that people can actually access the things they need to on foot. I think it's a no-brainer. So yeah, Metro Matters didn't really capture that. I think Radio Free Urbanism, I really do think that's like we went with the right choice for sure.
It's definitely stoked some people because they think we're like funded by the CIA.
Oh yeah, first episode we had to kind of come out and let everybody know that we weren't CIA backed.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Could you imagine? Austin says Nick doesn't like feet first. Hidden drama between the hosts. 100%. Actually, I'm serious. When I saw Nick was like, nah, on the feet first into urbanism, I was like, well, fine then. I guess we won't be going with that one. That one did. I was like, what? Why are you voting? It's fine, Nick.
If you notice, there's exactly one result where it got yes, love it from everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're watching it on screen, of course, on YouTube, or if you're streaming it live.
Yeah, I wonder if we did this, we could have ranked it. So however many there are here, there's like 14, 15. We could have ranked them to best to least and seen what had the highest number or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like so Pedal Path and Platform was pretty high ranking as well. So was the Urbanism Hour.
Yeah.
Those were definitely the highest. Which ones? So yeah, Urban Pyramid. That's the one. Me and Nick and Ethan's like, it's fine. I don't know. None of us liked that one very much. Urbanist Insights. I was like, yeah, it's good. And then you guys were, it's fine. Yeah. This is kind of interesting looking back on what might have been.
Well, which name would you have chosen? What's your number one out of all of these? I think I know the answer, but
my number one was Feet First. That was the number one. I was like, yeah, Feet First, because that's so much my focus, right? That's my tagline at the end of the show. That's what I always say. And so that was, that was 100% my number one. What about you, Ethan?
Surprisingly, mine was the Urbanism Hour.
Okay.
My only concern with it was if it was going to be a name that was already taken, because it honestly sounds like something that's already out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it wasn't, I was all on board with it. But of course, we had our final dissenting opinion, and a dissenting opinion at the end of the day. But it was Nick.
Yeah.
Either way, I think it really lined up really well that we all kind of had our we didn't all have a ton of favorites. We all had somewhere from 3 to 5 where we were like, yes, love it. But they only aligned on Radio Free Urbanism.
Yeah, and I gave the most supportive votes out of all of us. I only had it's fine, and 1 I won't quit, and a bunch of it's good. 5, yes, I love it. Whereas you guys only had 4, yes, I love it. And then it's kind of interesting. Maybe I'm just too positive of a guy. Maybe I should be a little bit more fiery and contrarian.
Your average is very high.
My average is very high. It's true. Yeah. I like that. What was what would you say was your number one, Nick?
Mine was definitely pedal path and platform. I felt like it rolled off the tongue. It would be memorable, for sure.
Yeah. I think
and
that's
the alliteration's kind of cool.
That's a good one as well. Ethan, why did you only say it's good to pedal path and platform? That could have been our number one, man.
Honestly, which one? Where was it on that list?
It's number 2.
Oh, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I don't think I was in love with it. It rolls off the tongue, but it's really a lot to type in too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's true. Radio-free urbanism, I think, has a classic tone to it, right?
I think Streetwise would have been the most memorable, but again, I think you said something. It didn't quite capture the whole picture, right?
Yeah. It's kind of it could be for a number of things, right? Like it's not quite as specific. I like it, but not quite as specific as it could have been. But let's get into some stories here today on this 50th episode special extravaganza. Basically, you just witnessed the extravaganza, just us talking about what could have been. Nick, you got a story.
Yeah, this is coming out of New York City. So I had not seen this. It hadn't come across my social media feed somehow, but I did hear about it on Bike Talk just recently. They talked about it a little bit, but they didn't get into the details that I would have wanted to talk about this particular situation. So this is coming out of New York City, like I said. And there was it wasn't a hearing, doesn't matter. There was some kind of meeting, council meeting, and it was about bike lanes taking away space for cars, as happens all the time. And, well, let's just have a quick listen to see what was going on here. I'm going to share this here, and you can listen up.
And how long have you lived?
My original address, too?
Excuse me?
Do you need my original address as well?
No, I do not, and don't get smart.
Okay.
Okay, because I don't like it.
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay. What's the
Correct.
population of Cincinnati, Ohio, my friend?
These days, I think it's about 600,000.
600,000.
Correct.
Now you move to the big city, 8 million people. Wow.
About 8 years ago, for the record.
5 years ago, that's it?
8 years ago.
8 years
Thank
ago.
you.
Okay, so you're a newbie. Let me explain something to you. You claim car dependence.
That's correct.
That's right, because
Yes.
you've only lived here for 8 years. You don't know a thing about New York or how we work. Okay? How dare you come to this panel with your so-called expertise and kill car people? Car people are murderers? I mean, look, what did you lay out? Because actually I was cracking up. You actually made me laugh.
I saw.
Okay? This is not Amsterdam. This is New York City.
I didn't
Take
say
a
what.
back seat because you have
Yeah,
no
that's
idea
good.
what you're
That's
talking
good.
about.
So, this is Vicky Palladino. She's a councilwoman in New York. And like I said, it was about bike lanes taking away space for cars. And you could probably tell on which side she was on. And later, I think she went and said, this is New York. We need our cars. So what part do you think I want to talk about in this particular thing?
Well, maybe all of it.
There's a few.
Yeah, there's a lot to
about.
break down here.
But first off,
just
I
in
want to
that
start
30-second clip.
Yeah, the first thing I want to start talking about here is the fact that her belittling this person who is a safe streets advocate because they haven't lived in New York long enough. And I wanted to talk about what is the appropriate time someone has to live in a place to have a say in the community they live in. Now, I am going to come from the perspective as soon as you move in and your address is permanent in a place and you live there, you have a say in your community. And that's the end of the day. It's this gatekeeping thing where, hey, you're not from here, you're an outsider. I've been living here for 5 generations. Like my family's been here since it was called New Amsterdam. As she said, this isn't Amsterdam. It used to be called New Amsterdam. That's funny enough. But it's ridiculous, right? We've talked about this before in the show about how you don't have to be an expert to talk about the place you live. The people who are going to the city council's meetings already aren't experts for the most part. They may be dissenting the things that you're supporting. So I just think it's bullshit. That's it. Yeah.
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 It's really disappointing to see somebody, especially like an elected official, who is there to represent and communicate with people, right? Who are both within the city organization, both government, corporation, but also like the people who live in the city. And 8 years in a city is not like, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a while, right? Like,
That's two undergrads worth.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
you've spent
that's
time
a whole
there.
PhD worth of time.
Yeah, like you could listen, in 8 years, you could fall in love, have a child, that child could start school, and like you could have another child who starts school, you can, like spend time at the museums, you can get involved on different boards, you can, and obviously if you show up to meetings, you care about your community. Right? Like, and to say that somebody who's lived there for 8 years is a newbie to the community, and also to be like, oh, you moved from Cincinnati, like that's a fake city, right? Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're talking about our communities here. Everybody has input to be provided, whether you agree with it or not, right?
Yeah, it's funny how she went and told him to like don't be a smartass, and then she literally goes into this thing and baiting him in so that she can drive home this point about you're not actually from here.
I think the greatest irony about this too, of saying that someone's not actually from New York, is that New York is a city built on immigrants and built on people who are constantly moving there. Mm-hmm. Like, New York is not a place that is entirely built on the people who were born and lived there. It's built on the people who come and move there too. So it's just insanely ironic that someone says that, especially with a last name like Saladino, where you know your family is Italian immigrants. I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, like, it's really insane that we have, people on city councils who are willing to belittle their citizens like that. And then also at the end of the day, promote car infrastructure in the most walkable city in the U.S.
Yeah.
It is wild. Now, I've heard that this particular area where she was voted in is like a swing seat.
Is it Staten Island?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But I've heard it goes both ways, and she allegedly is quite a ardent Trump supporter. So there's
that makes sense.
That just kind of leads into this whole thing about cars and car culture. But in New York City, it just seems insane. And, the most transit-dense city in the world.
Well, that's also kind of an interesting point of it, right? Like, like in Calgary, people will say this isn't New York or this isn't Toronto or isn't Vancouver, right? Yeah. And I'm sure like people in Vancouver or Toronto, they're like, this isn't New York. But yeah, like, I don't know. It just seems incredibly tone deaf and also just rude, inappropriate, for especially at a meeting, on the public record. It's embarrassing.
But these are the type of things, like, she's performing in a sense, I think, at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
And the people who she's talking to are going to eat this shit up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, which, I don't know, like, you've only been here 8 years. That's, like, he could have said anything, and I feel like she would have said, like, you're a newbie here, right? Yeah. Like, tried to other him. Even if he said, like, 15 years, she'd say, well, I've been here my whole life. Yeah. Right?
I can't believe she's clip farming in the council.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, you see it with Parliament. You see it, a lot of that, like in Canada, a lot of the question period in Parliament is just like to get clicks, right?
Like,
it's theater, right?
Crazy.
Instead of like seriously doing a job, like actually taking your job seriously, and trying to be an effective politician or public servant here.
But it's just crazy to think 8 years, obviously, right, like you said, it didn't matter what he said, but 8 years, man. Like, I haven't lived in Vancouver for 8 years. I'm in my 8th year now. I know Vancouver better than I know any other city I've lived in. Like, I know it like the back of my hand. To think that, like, you're going to say they're not from here is just bullshit. Get the fuck out of here. What an asshole.
Yeah. Austin in the chat says, personally, I think more value should be given to people's opinions that weren't born somewhere because they chose that place. I think that's an interesting perspective. I don't know if I'd put more value on somebody's opinion. I think anybody, like, I live in Calgary still because I choose to be here. There's lots of things that draw me to being here because I am from here originally. But I think that's kind of an interesting perspective to take is, like, this guy obviously chose to come to New York City for some reason.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've talked about the value of traveling in general, experiencing other places and how that can open your perspective on the world in the places you live. So there's something to that. Like we talk about, hey, we should just send politicians to Amsterdam for a weekend before they actually start designing our streets.
And send politicians anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like just like let them see what other places are like, and kind of get the creative juices flowing. Encourage other people in the community to go visit places and bring back the best ideas, right? Like we're trying to make the best city in the world. Everyone wants their city to be the best in the world. And obviously only one city can be, and that's Calgary. But like everybody's trying for the best here. So why not like put effort into that, right? Yeah, like 8 years. 8 years is a long time, guys.
Like that's 8 years. That's my whole adult life. So that's not a short amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. Any final thoughts on this one before we move on?
If you live in her district, vote against her. I'm just saying, like pure hater energy right here. Vote against her. And that's my personal opinion. It's not the opinion of this show, but pure hater energy right here. If you live in her district, vote against her.
But Ethan, you've got at least 7-8 years to go before you're actually a Portlander.
Oh, no. I have to be born here. So I'm just going to go and go back 24 years and be born here. So
yeah, could you imagine if you could only vote in the place that you were born in? Like if you moved from your hometown, like you could still vote on those politics, but not on the place you moved to.
Dang, I'd still be voting in Illinois.
Yeah, that'd be kind of wacky, right?
Where would you be voting, Nick?
It'd be terrible. What's that?
Yeah.
Where would you be voting, Nick?
I'd be voting in Leamington, Ontario, the tomato capital of the world, or at least of Canada.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
I'd be
it's where
voting
a lot
in
of
Calgary.
Heinz ketchup used to come from. Now
I'd be voting in Aurora, Illinois, Wayne's World, City of Lights.
Very interesting. Okay, so we've got Wayne's World, we've got ketchup, and we've got Calgary, which is the heart of the New West. Be part of the energy, the blue sky city now, as our new motto is. Jen says she'd be voting in Sexsmith, Alberta. Very cool. And Austin says something completely outrageous. He says, I primarily buy French's ketchup because of how Heinz screwed over Leamington. Okay, maybe that's not outrageous. I appreciate a moral stance, but Heinz ketchup tastes way better than French's. Let's be real. And Austin says he'd be voting in Newark, Delaware. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing. I've decided to pull a Nick today and bring a topic instead of a story. I want to talk about micromobility, e-bikes, and transit in the suburbs. Now, I've been thinking a lot. I've talked to some people who kind of, it's an interesting idea, basically to concentrate transit funding where transit is most used, right? Which I think anybody would kind of be like, okay, I can see that. But then you leave out a lot of people who live in the suburbs. And here's my big issue with that, is a lot of people choose to drive till they qualify, right? You drive, you move out of the city center until you can afford rent or a mortgage in a place, literally anywhere. Most people, let's be real, most people don't really like choose their house. They take what's available, right? What they can get into, especially if they're renters. So you're talking about people moving to the suburbs because they can't afford to live closer into the city where the jobs are and stuff. And then you also say, you have to drive, which a lot of the time, and Tom Babin has a great video where he talks about the cost of driving to the cost of housing, and he uses Calgary specifically as an example. And a lot of the time you end up making up for the cost that you're saving in just going and paying for your gas and paying for your insurance and your car payment, right? And so I'm very against removing transit coverage from the suburbs. I think we need to have broad coverage across the city. Kind of, you guys can add your thoughts here. Tell me a little bit what you think. What's kind of your perception on this? This
is absolutely something I've considered. So the video you reference is something that I love this video because it's something I've thought about for a long time, by Tom from Shifter, the housing transportation budget paradox. And I think I commented on the video. Oh, there's the comment that I commented. You can see it right there. I sent it to my wife. She keeps telling me we should move out of the city to save money, and I have to remind her that would we likely need to get another car to make it work, which would fight against the budget, right? That we're trying to save money in the first place. But yeah, people don't realize how much more expensive it is. So consider me. We live in Vancouver. We're car light. We have one car, which we use to get out of the city or for moving large things. Like my wife bought a Peloton bike a few weeks ago. We went and picked it up with the car. It's nice to have that. I still think we should get rid of it, but hey, there's two people and we have to compromise. But if we even moved back to Ontario, there is very few places where we could live, where we could both save money on our housing costs and not need a car. So even moving to London, Ontario, back to London, Ontario, like ignoring the facts that the rents there are insane. Like a 2-bedroom in London, Ontario was over $3,000 a month. I'm not even paying that much right now in Vancouver. Like I'm close to downtown. It's crazy. But say even we saved, $1,000, $1,500 a month on our monthly cost for rent or housing. How much is a car every year? How much is it every month? What, $500 to $1,200 a month on a car? So not really going to work.
No,
Yeah,
right? Like
and
it's expensive.
a lot of those costs on cars too are very sneaky as well. Obviously everybody considers gas and everybody's going to include that in their budget, but they're not going to really think about insurance or repairs or anything along the lines of actually having to maintain the vehicle as well too. But really, one thing that I think a lot of our suburbs do wrong in terms of suburban transit, I'm actually having a video come out on this soon, is just that last mile connection. And really what we should be prioritizing if we're going to do suburban transit, which we kind of have to because we need to accommodate everybody within our metro areas and people who are getting different jobs and, seeing family, other things like that, just using transit in their daily life, is making that last mile connection as seamless as it is to the rapid transit that they took to get out to that part of the suburb. But no, really, Nick, Alex, what you guys are saying, that shifter video was actually really great. It's a really great way of showing people that city living really isn't that, really, it's comparable to living out in the suburbs just purely because of the cost of a car. Out here, if I compare cost of living in Portland to Las Vegas, Vegas is actually higher. And this is two different markets we're talking about. But rent over here in Vegas is cheaper. I can live a lot closer to the city. I live a lot closer to downtown than I did in Vegas. But cost of living's cheaper. I don't have to have a car while I'm living here. And overall, it's more affordable than it was living somewhere very car dependent.
Yeah. And so when you make a decision to move somewhere, there's a variety of things that are going into those decisions. And I think we often forget about the transportation costs, right? Because a lot of us just kind of naturally choose to have a car based on our environment, based on how we're raised, based on whatever, right? And so what ends up happening, you're trying to save money, so you move out to the suburbs, but you might end up spending even more on transportation, right? And if we cut off transit service to those areas, then you're paying even more in transportation. And so I look at this and I say, the coverage is huge. The coverage matters. And I also don't think that it should be like a 45-minute frequency in the suburbs, right? And I'm not talking about the exurbs. I'm not talking about Okotoks, Chestermere, Cochrane, Airdrie. I'm talking about like Cranston, Citadel, right? Like people in Calgary will know these places. These places also need transit. They all need transit, right? And it all benefits the system. I remember growing up down in Southeast Calgary in Mackenziestown, I had a bus that would take me to the Red Line. But the bus was a long route and it'd kind of go along kind of circuitous milk run around the neighborhood, right? And that was frustrating. I think we need better ways to connect these communities than kind of meandering around cul-de-sacs, right? We need people to be able to get around. And something I've been thinking about lately is e-bikes. Ethan, you mentioned the last mile transit solutions. And I think the place where e-bikes, and we see bike shares, but typically in our downtown areas, but I think the place where e-bikes might potentially benefit people the most is out in the suburbs, because you can pick it up and you can go. You can go when you need to go. You can go where you need to go, right? For a lighter, more affordable, you're not having to pay for the same amount of labor as a bus driver, right? So What do you guys think about the idea of doing more like bike share? This is an idea that's been percolating in my head. What do you think of the idea of doing more bike share in the suburbs rather than just in the core?
So yeah, actually, I think it's a great idea to do bike share out of the core of the city, especially in further out suburban neighborhoods. One area that I've seen probably more e-bikes than anywhere else in the whole Portland metro area, at least per capita, is Beaverton, which is one of the main suburbs just to the west of town. Every time I go out there, when I have to go out there, it's very suburban, but it does have both frequent bus routes and service on the Max Light Rail. But you do see a large amount of people who are using e-bikes. And a lot of them are also hopping on the Max as well, too. And you can see that they're using those e-bikes as great last mile connections. And just traditional bikes, too, or e-scooters, they all work in very similar ways for just getting from one point to another. Of course, there are differences. I'm not saying that there aren't, but, at the end of the day, they serve the same function. Get you from point A, or from your main transit method to your last mile destination. And a lot of people are using them, and it's very exciting. But including those bike share facilities for people that can't afford an e-bike or can't afford an e-scooter or aren't physically fit enough to ride a normal bike would be incredible, just to connect those last mile communities and really ensure that people have that connection and they don't have to bring their bikes or scooters around with them everywhere.
Yeah, it's a superpower to transit, right? Especially the bike share, because you don't have to worry about storing it. I know a lot of transit connections here in Vancouver, they're adding bike parking, secure bike parking, that you have to actually tap your card into, which is great. But it's really nice to have the bike share. The problem here is that they're not really in the more suburban areas. In the core of Vancouver, tons of bike share. There's Mobies all over the place. Some are electric, some are acoustic. But as soon as you go south of 16th, and like our streets go all the way down to like 70 something, like all the way to the south end of Vancouver, they're like non-existent. There's like a handful of stops near Main Street, but that's it. But yeah, for a city that has transit connections throughout the whole city, it seems strange that they don't exist, especially in the south end. That's exploding right now. There's so much construction going on. It's in Midtown as well, in Vancouver, everywhere really. But yeah, it's one of those things that can just help you get to where you're going. Obviously, it's great for those middle, short trips, anywhere from 1 to 5 kilometers if it's too far to walk. Fantastic standalone. But really the bonus is in when it comes to transit. And this is something I talk about briefly in my upcoming video. Like, what if we banned bike lanes? And this is a huge part. It would really affect transit. A lot of people think if they don't want bike lanes. We want to get rid of bike lanes. It's causing traffic congestion. We know that's all bullshit. Right, but one of the big parts is people that think, oh, that person on a cyclist they'll deal with it, or they'll ride the bus or they'll ride the train. Maybe that person on a bike was riding 1 to 2 kilometers to get to the train station so that they could go to where they're going. Now they're going to get in their car because that last mile, whatever you want to call it, is hard or impossible to do, and you're going to affect transit numbers while also making traffic worse. So yeah, I think more bike share in general is fantastic, and also allowing just legality, for legality's sake, micromobility devices in general. Like even in Toronto, riding an e-scooter is illegal, which is just like, what year is it, guys? Come on. It's stupid.
Yeah, there was some news that came out pretty recently out of Portland that banned the e-scooter share within some of the downtown blocks, which I'm not the hugest fan of. I don't really approve of that, but I can see an understanding. Now, of course, they should probably pair that with the banning of cars in those blocks too, because those are even more dangerous. I mean, come on, we can't be allowing that stuff. But no, it really, at the end of the day, making those last mile connections is really where you get the important ridership. Of course, there's 3 different ways that you can do this. You can have transit-oriented development where you make it actually walkable to get to the station, or in most cases out in the suburbs, because of the sprawl that we've built over the years, we can connect people by bikes or by transit. And we can do that by making good local bus connections that are frequent, which is a little bit more expensive, but you don't have to build the infrastructure, or you can go and do the bikes and micromobility. Now, you have to build infrastructure for that, parking, bike lanes, mixed-use cycling paths, but at the end of the day, once you have that, you have great connections to locations and destinations out in the suburbs that people can get to. This is more job opportunities for people both in the cities and the suburbs. It's an incredible way to connect our communities.
Yeah, and I'll say on the note of pathways, Calgary has a fantastic multi-use path network in the city. We have a long way to go as far as on-street bike network, like to actually complete that network. But as far as like through the valley, we've got it great, and it's getting better all the time. And so I think doubling down on that is really critical, and actually allowing people to go places. I was bringing this up with a friend of mine, this idea of, you know, a bike share, and I very specifically made sure to talk about it like it's a docked bike share. I don't want any more of these dockless bikes littered all over the sidewalks. It drives everybody absolutely insane, and it's also just bad for accessibility. And so, but having a docked bike share would be fantastic, and I think the place where it can make the most difference is in the suburbs. I think that's a place where you could get good bang for your buck. Is doing it out there. Of course, a lot of the companies who are doing these things might not be as interested in going out there, right? It's not necessarily as much of a guarantee. You need a bigger network, especially if you're doing a docked bike share, right? So those are challenges that we can overcome. But in talking with my friend about this, she was mentioning, she says, yeah, you know, I would love an e-bike. Like, sometimes I think that'd be so cool to have an e-bike. But then she says she realizes, why would I need an e-bike? Because she lives in a closer to downtown neighborhood, right? She lives in Sunnyside here in Calgary. And she's like, why would I need an e-bike when everything I need is within like a 5-10 minute walk? And so we talked about how, you know, having this trip extender of e-bikes out in the suburbs would be great. And we also talked about how isolated a lot of particularly our elderly population can get when they don't have access to get to the things that they need to get to, especially if they end up not having a driver's license for, you know, a variety of reasons, right? So I think all of these are considerations and something I've been thinking a lot about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's huge, right? And I think at least these should be part of a transit network, in the sense that the transit system in your city should be the ones running them if possible. Because I've been to many cities that they're private, right? They're run by Lime or Bird or wherever, which is not necessarily bad, but I don't know. When you're looking to extract something out of a community, it's not always ideal.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one city that I've seen that does bike share really, really well, maybe not the network itself, but does bike share, the system is really good, Los Angeles. Because Metro LA runs the bike share there. So bike shares are a lot cheaper than you'll see in other cities. I think it's like $1.75 for a 30-minute ride. And on top of this, they're willing to put bike share stations where private companies wouldn't.
And they also have a different perspective on where they should be putting those bike share stations, right? Like, you can have it as an integrated system. And that's why I really think it's important when we talk about how we get around in the city, we take a holistic view. How do we walk, bike, drive, take the bus, take the train, right? How are all of these ways that we're getting around our city interacting with each other? And how do we make sure that we're able to use a variety of options that both provide both mobility freedom, but also redundancy, right? If you get up one day and your car is broken, you want to have a transit system that's reliable enough to get you to work. Or if the bus decides not to run, you want to have maybe a bikeway network that is reliable enough to get you to work or to school or to wherever you're going, right? I think it's really important to build in that redundancy and variety into our transit systems. And by transit, I mean every way that we get around. I mean mobility systems. I think that's something that we're not doing as well as we should be. So yeah, this was an idea. I appreciate you guys participating in the conversation and kind of sharing your thoughts.
No, I love it.
On there.
Obviously, I love it. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, we love e-bikes on the show. We've said it before.
We do love e-bikes. I honestly think e-bikes are fantastic. Yeah, I think they're great. Ethan, you got a story. Let's
Absolutely.
move on.
I have a good story here. Well, it's good and it's bad because we have two stories kind of merged into one here. One is a little bit kind of on. I will start off with that one. So the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, better known as SEPTA, has currently reached its fiscal cliff. And it is not going to be supported by the state financially, so it's going to have to make some cuts. First thing that's going to happen is fares are going to be increased by as much as 30% on the regional rail, the subways there, and the buses. And the worst part here is we're also seeing service cuts alongside this too. So service on most of the lines will be cut by 20%. Some routes will actually be fully axed, but we'll see a 20% reduction in service. On top of this, there is a hiring freeze on non-essential workers for the company. So if you're not, or for the transit agency, so if you're not an operator or anybody doing essential work for the line, such as like cleaning and maintenance, they're not going to hire any new people for that. And it's overall just a very, very prime example of why we need to fund transit in this country or in this continent, honestly, because at least in the U.S., a lot of our transit is very, very dependent on getting short-term funding. There's not very stable sources, and SEPTA is probably one of the biggest examples. It can't actually raise funds internally. It has to rely on the state government to actually fund the system. It can't rely on the city of Philadelphia or anything like that. And at the end of the day, it's kind of a system that's been hamstrung by its overall neglect from, overall leadership in the state and at the county level and at the city levels. But I have some really good transit news to go alongside this, because recently the city of Nashville passed a ballot initiative with a half-a-cent sales tax to fund $3.1 billion towards public transit in the city. So this means it's not just public transit, actually, at the end of the day. It's going to be bike lanes, it's going to be doing signal priority for buses, it's going to be building out a bus rapid transit network. So while we do have this funding and service cut going on in Philadelphia, we do have the new booming city of Nashville actually deciding to fund its transit network, and it's because of a very progressive mayor that helped push this through and really get that funding for the city. So kind of we got some bad news coming out of Philadelphia, but good news coming out of Nashville in terms of transit. And that's just kind of an update here. We've got a few more ballot initiatives that went through as well too. We'll cover that as well and get a bit more in depth on it. But what do you guys think about these two different stories here?
I'm just in my mind I'm drawing just these analogies about this in relation to soccer, like European football. If I don't know if you guys know, but we have franchise sports here mostly in North America where like there's a league and those are all the teams and they play. But in a lot of soccer leagues in Europe, they get promoted and relegated. So like the top 20 teams are in this league, and then if you're at the bottom and that's how you finish the season, you get kicked down to the lower league, and other teams from the lower league come back up into the Premier League, for example, in England. And what happens a lot of the time for those teams that get relegated is they start to die. And a big part of that is because they lose money. They lose money, that means they can't afford certain players. They can't afford players, their team gets worse. If their team gets worse, less people come to watch the matches. And it's a lot like that with transit, right? Because as soon as you stop funding certain things, you bring funding away from, like SEPTA in Philadelphia, for example, it might get worse for a lot of people. They might stop relying on it as much, which is going to bring in less revenue. And it makes it worse for everybody. The experience is going to be worse. Less people come in, less money comes in, and it can spiral out of control.
We call that a positive feedback loop, but there's nothing positive about that feedback loop.
Yeah, but it goes the opposite way, like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds comes in and buys your team. Whoa, all of a sudden you're doing great.
Yeah, right? Like money talks, right? Like money matters. And what we choose to fund and what we choose not to fund, it makes a difference. It makes a serious difference. And listen, I'll say a couple things about this here. So in Ottawa the other weekend, I was out there with another guy from Calgary Transit Riders, and we were out there basically telling the federal government, like, hey guys, we need operational dollars for our transit systems. Like, we've got these transit systems, right? We need money to run them. We need money to maintain them. We need money to take care of these things and to get people where they need to get to. The federal government's response was basically, we only really do ribbon cutting projects. If you want to do operational money, you got to talk to the provincial government. And this is incredibly frustrating because it's just passing the buck, right? And the buck always ends up coming back down on cities. It always ends up coming back to cities to take care of these stuff because we're the ones here. We're the ones sitting in our cities looking at this stuff every day, using this stuff every day, and interacting with constituents every single day, right? In Alberta, our MLAs show up to Edmonton, and our MPs go off to Ottawa, right? They're not here every single day dealing with these things. They like to show up to the events. They like to cut ribbons and kiss babies, right? But we actually have to take care of this stuff. And the maintenance is not sexy. You know, like, you don't show up to a meeting and say, like, hey guys, we're going to make sure that all of our bus drivers get paid this year. Snip, right? Like, I even have scissors. Snip, right? Like, we're, you know, like, it's not sexy to maintain this stuff. And it goes for, you see it with like roads and bridges too. Like, it's not just transit infrastructure. It's also bike infrastructure. It's also car infrastructure. But we have to take care of this stuff because people actually have to get to where they're going.
Yeah.
And so it is incredibly frustrating when we lose funding to these things, when governments decide it's not important to fund things. Because what they're saying is it's not important for you to get to work. It's not important for you to get to school or to take your kids to school or do your grocery shopping or do anything else, right? That's what they're saying. They're saying it's not important and it doesn't matter. Whereas if we cared about these things, it would be in the budget, right? Like, always look in the budget. They can say what they want, but you got to look in the budget and see what's actually getting funded. So this is incredibly frustrating. But good for Nashville. That's great.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, and I mean, BRT is a pretty good start for a city like that.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, it's not the greatest thing in the world, you know, transit funding wise. I mean, it's not like they're building out like an 8-line metro system or anything, but you know, it's good to hear that they're getting a start because I don't think a train that runs like 4 round trips a day on the weekdays and a lackluster bus system was going to carry a city that's growing as fast as Nashville is.
Yeah, and I'll say as well, like you mentioned, signal priority in there. Signal priority is a big deal, right?
It's huge.
If you get your buses running more efficiently, you can improve the end-to-end time, maintain the same frequency at the stops, and free up potentially a bus because your end-to-end time is improved. You can free up a bus to use elsewhere in the system, right? Like, that's a big deal. You also save a lot on diesel costs. I know on one particular route in Calgary, we have saved 7,600 liters of diesel annually just by installing the little blinky light on the traffic signals, right? Like, these little things, they make a huge difference. So you got to look for those, you know, big bang for your buck sort of items in order to improve the efficiency of your transit system. It goes a long way. It really does.
Yeah, and also just making a good-looking system too. So this is mostly going to be BRT, and if you can kind of compare it to any system that you're going to see out there, it's probably going to be comparable to what Indigo is doing in Indianapolis, with a few really well-built-out bus rapid transit lines. And not like the this is bus rapid transit, you know, where it's just at most a painted bus lane with, you know, maybe a slightly better shelter. No, this is going to be an actual bus rapid transit project with multiple lines, just like Indigo and Indianapolis. So hopefully they can get that built out within the next 5 to 10 years and have some good, reliable transit 7 days a week for the people of Nashville, because they really deserve it, especially with the city growing that fast.
Yeah, Nashville obviously has a lot of really cool things to see, and it'd be great to be able to get around there. When I was there, we were driving, but it would be great to have a convenient transit system for visitors as well, right? Especially Nashville does get a lot of visitors. People visit that city. Any final thoughts on this before we get to our listener mail?
Yeah, they should have built that light rail transit that Austin was talking about, where they had a referendum like 5 or 6 years ago where they were thinking about building light rail, but that got turned down. But better late than never.
Better late than never. But what you said, Alex, about how, the ribbon cutting and actually upkeeping these things is very much like any kind of thing you start yourself, right? Oh, I'm going to get fit, right? The start is so exciting. There's so many cool things you can imagine how it's going to be. But actually doing the thing every day and keeping it going, that's hard. And it's not sexy most of the time.
Yeah, and also, like, nobody congratulates you if you've been fit for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's like, oh my goodness, good for you.
Yeah.
They don't care anymore that you're in shape. They're going to talk about it for the first few months, and then after that, it's like, yeah, you got it, yeah, whatever, who cares, right? Like, I think doing these maintenance things, though, that's huge. That improves the longevity of the system. It improves the livability of your city, right? And Jen says they just want to sell your before and after pics. That's basically true, right? Like that's what we're talking about with these ribbon cutting events. But we have to actually show up and do kind of the menial tasks of actually running a city and getting people to and from where they're going. Let's get into some listener mail.
Let's get into it.
We've got a comment from Jen. She sent this in to us. She says, "What's your personal record for distance and steps walked in a day?" Nick, Ethan, are you guys step counters? Do you know?
I am.
Okay, tell us about it.
So I have 2 days that really kind of come close to my record. About a year and there's a Cybertruck in the background. Sorry, I got distracted. I'm looking out my window. I see a Cybertruck. I'm like, ugh, yeah. I gotta point that out. It's kind of like seeing just like a car crash or something. You're just gonna be like, ugh. Anyways, about a year and a half ago now, I was doing a trip around the U.S. by train, and in the city of St. Louis, I ended up racking up about 38,000 steps in one day. And last August, I kind of came close to that in Salt Lake City, where I hit like 35,000 steps in a day. So it's that's around my goal, or around my record is around like 38,000.
Yeah, I'm just kind of scrolling through my phone here because it just tracks it automatically. The largest I've seen so far was 31,000, but I know I've done more than that. I've done over 35, and it always seems to be when I'm traveling. If I'm in a city traveling around, you just happen to walk a lot more. But we've talked about this before, about the whole Middle Earth thing, and I've walked to Middle Earth basically, or I do every 6 months. But that's I can't seem to find any really big ones here. Oh, I got 34,500. That's the biggest one I've found in the past 12 months.
Yeah, here. Okay, let me see. So there's all these badges. So daily steps, 5,000 steps in a day, 15,000. Here we go. Okay, so my most steps in a day. So I got July 18th, 2023, 50,000 steps in a day.
Oh my God.
What was I doing? I want to go back to my calendar and see what was I doing July 18th, 2023. Because I know, so I got a Fitbit, I think during COVID. I got it mostly just to use as a watch, but also, it's cool that it counts steps. And so I did a lot of walking during the day. So, okay, I'm riff a little bit, talk a little bit. I'm going to go into my calendar and see where I
kept
was.
Scrolling now, and I found my biggest one by far is 46,800. Not quite as much as you, but yeah.
Oh my God.
That's what I want to know too. What the heck?
I gotta step it up.
What was I doing that day?
Yeah.
This is May 5th, 2019. No idea. COVID. Maybe I just went for a really long walk.
Oh, it's pre-COVID. If it was 2019.
COVID. Pre-COVID?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
COVID was
no
March
idea.
2020.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know what I was doing.
I think maybe I was in England or something. I don't remember.
Oh, that's celebration.
I was in the UK exploring.
I was working landscaping. I was mowing lawns that entire day, and I think that might have been my boss might have been away, so I was doing everything by hand with the push mower with nobody else on the team that day. So I think that must have been what it was. I was just
tell me
literally
that-
like walking lines back and forth mowing lawns.
Please tell me they
entire
gave you
day.
a push mower or something, like an assisted push mower or something.
Oh, it had like a little bit of power. It had a
Okay.
little bit of power in the wheels. Yeah. But later that week, I was also Barbie and Oppenheimer came out.
The old Barbenheimer.
The old
Barbenheimer,
Barbenheimer.
yeah, and I saw them both. I saw Oppenheimer twice that weekend. Which actually, okay,
That's
this
a
is
lot. That's a lot.
since this is our 50th episode, I feel the right to go on a little side tangent with this. So when I went to see Oppenheimer, I was going to Chinook in Calgary, the Chinook Scotiabank Theater, and I was going with a bunch of friends to see it on film, right? Like this was one of the 5 theaters or whatever in Canada that was presenting the movie on film. When we got in there, the audio was completely out of sync and it was pitched up. It was messed up. So we sat there for like, I don't know, the first 20 minutes of the movie while they're trying to figure out what was going on. And eventually they're just like, sorry guys, yeah, you're going to just have to go home and come back. This was opening night. We were so upset. But then they give us a refund and they gave us free tickets. And I still have the free passes that they gave me that night. So if anybody in Calgary feels like going and seeing a movie for free, let me know. Yeah, if there's anything good in there right now. But those tickets are a year and a half old, but they're still good. There's no expiry. So
Nice.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's when I got my 50,000 step record. Jen says now you should all try for 50,000 steps to break your records. Yeah, I want to keep going. I want to see what more I can get. Yeah, I did
That's a good
a lot of walking last summer.
Yeah, that is a lot of walking.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Our next listener mail, Nick, you got this one?
Yeah, this is from Skitch. What is the most impressive place you've biked or taken transit to? Think places people would expect are only accessible by car. This was a tough one. I thought about this for a
is a
little
tough
while,
one.
and the best I could come up with myself was when I was in Japan. But you're like, oh, Japan has great transit. Yeah, well, you wouldn't expect it to be great in like the mountain, like rural areas, but there's still frequent bus service, albeit the actual bus stop is like a foot wide on like a rock wall with cars going by. It's not very pleasant. But I took the bus to a remote, not Shinkansen, Jesus Christ. What's it called? The hot springs. The words have escaped my brain.
Onsens?
Onsen, yes. Taking a bus there, which we were surprised by when we did our research to get there. Of course we did, because why not?
Yeah, I'm trying to think where I've taken transit to. I mean, could you say I've taken transit from Calgary to London? I mean, I took the bus to the airport and only used transit while I was in the UK. I don't really know. Like, I mean, we walk a lot of places. Like, we've always walked growing up in my family. We walked everywhere. If it was within a 45-minute walk, it was a walkable distance to my mom. So, yeah, I'm not, I don't know if I have a great answer to this. Skitch in the chat says, though, I recently biked 18 miles to IKEA, which is in a very industrial car-focused area of the metro. So, yeah, I something like that works. I've taken transit to go play soccer in kind of an industrial area of the city. Yeah, what about you, Ethan?
Yeah, so right now I haven't really taken transit to go super far. I mean, I've done transit to Boulder City and Lake Mead National Recreation Area, which is not like so super far from Las Vegas and is definitely understandable. But I do have a really interesting trip on transit planned. It's to take transit up to basically the lodge on Mount Hood, which is where they filmed The Shining.
Oh, sweet.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
super
that's the plan. When I found out they filmed The Shining there, I'm like, okay, yeah. And then I found out I can take a bus there. Like, it's like 3 different connections, but I can take a bus there and it'll take like 3 hours. But I think I'm gonna give it a try one of these days.
Yeah. That'd be sweet, actually. We should just find like interesting places that you can take transit to, like where there's a bus going to such and such, and just be like, oh yeah, I took that bus. Like obscure buses.
The one thing about the Pacific Northwest, or at least Oregon in general, is that there are a lot of random like rural bus routes that can get you to some pretty interesting places, like the Tillamook Creamery, which is
oh man.
Yeah, you can take a bus. You can take transit from Portland to there. I think it'll take you about an hour and a half, but you can take the bus there.
Worth it.
100%.
Yeah.
Cannon Beach too, which is kind of like one of the iconic beaches of Oregon. Multnomah Falls, which is kind of like that iconic picturesque waterfall with the bridge in front of it that everybody likes to show off out here. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting rural transit trips that I'm going to be taking. But this is a very very Miles in Transit inspired question by Skitch here.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's interesting to think about. Where do we get to and how do we get there, right? Like, what are the different modes that we use to get different places? One thing, my parents live outside of the city, and I've long considered cycling out there to see them, just to kind of say like that I did it. It's a bit of a ride, but I think it could be interesting. I might have to bring Austin with me to do that one. I think Austin, you mentioned Lake Mead too, Ethan. I think Austin biked to Lake Mead too. I think he's got
he biked there from the Strip, so we'll give Austin credit on that one, because that's a hell of a bike ride.
Oh yeah, totally crazy. Nick, final thought?
You were talking about The Shining, and I just had this thought about, have you guys read Doctor Sleep? It's the sequel to The Shining. I don't know if you've read The Shining. The Shining is fantastic, by the way, the book. The movie's great too, obviously in its own way, but the book is really good. The sequel, fantastic. Loved it. But they actually did a sequel like the movie with
oh wow.
Was it McEwen or something? What's his name? Ewan McGregor? That's it. That guy. It was good, but it was a sequel to the movie. So it was interesting to see those together. But anyway, totally irrelevant.
But and super stuff. Cool.
And stuff.
We talk urbanism and stuff.
We talked and stuff and urbanism today.
We did. We actually, yeah.
Last week was
and
urbanism.
urbanism.
Stuff, and that's it.
And stuff and urbanism. Okay, so here's Austin's ride that he did from Vegas down to Lake Mead. So Austin is like a serious cyclist. Like, look at this.
It is a really nice ride, though. I will say that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and Austin says it's split into two videos. One video of the Strip and one from south of the Strip. Okay. Yeah, so this is out into the country. So this is actually pretty cool. This is really cool to see. And I admire Austin for...
Actually, you can see rail tunnels on the trail there just a little bit before getting to Hoover Dam.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So part of the trail there is actually on... It's a rail trail, but it was the train tracks that were used to build the dam. So they moved all the concrete material on it. But tunnels still exist, and they turned that into a rail trail. So probably one of the... Honestly, my favorite rail trail in this entire country.
Yeah. That's super cool. But yeah, grand and groovy. This has been super fun. I'd say mega ultra fun. If I could be so bold. Yeah, Ethan, do you want to start wrapping us up?
Absolutely, Alex. Folks, thank you so much for watching this episode, the 50th episode of the show. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. But Nick, where can the good people find you?
Oh, where you can find me: Instagram, Threads, maybe Blue Sky now. That seems to be the place people are going to. And YouTube at Nick the Door. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, you can find me at Humane Cities all over the place, at least on Instagram and YouTube. Alex Williams YYC, more all over the place. Twitter, X, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, I guess now. I guess we're doing that too. Yeah, everywhere. And I also want to say huge thanks everybody for joining us on our 50th episode, especially the people in the live chat, Austin, Jen, and Skitch. If you want to join the live chat, you can go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. And since this is a special episode, shout out to all of our guest hosts who have joined us over the past year of doing this show, and the people who have joined us on our special episodes as well. It's been a really cool experience getting to chat with people who have different perspectives, different views on how we build our cities and how they can be better for all of us who call them home. Well, this was fun. Ethan, take us away.
Folks, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to find me over on social media, it's always Climate in Transit. But guess what? I've been on Blue Sky since it was code access only, so maybe I'll have to re-download that again. But thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, train good, car bad.
2 wheels good.
And feet first.